We so rarely, in the work that all of us in this room do, take the time to think about what we've achieved. We're so focused on what we haven't done yet, and what's next, and what's coming back to bite us again that we thought we had resolved, that we're always looking ahead. And I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and talk about what an amazing thing the Violence Against Women Act has been. We may have lost the civil rights remedy, but all the other statutory provisions stand, and the amazing grant programs which have made such a difference.
When Victoria came to us, not surprisingly, we thought long and hard about getting involved in such a massive undertaking. And while we were very excited about it, we nonetheless knew that this would be a ton of work. And it seemed to make sense, I felt, to go out, and that's what I did. I went out and I talked to the other women leaders of women's groups at the time to see if they wanted to join with us. To really share some of the responsibility and work and building that would go on around this issue. And surprisingly, they all said no. They did not think that this was a big issue facing women. They didn't think that women really cared that much about it. But I must say, I'm very proud to say that we were right. We knew that this was a huge issue impacting women's lives.
I worried that the Violence Against Women Act would not go anywhere without strong support from outside of Congress. But I got Helen's approval, and in August 1990, I sent out a letter to organizations that I knew were working on related issues, inviting them to the first meeting of what would become the National Task Force on the Violence Against Women Act. The passage of VAWA in 1994 created a climate in which a high level of government attention to domestic violence, sexual assault, and other types of violence against women has become the norm.
What I'd like to focus on is my work as the Assistant Director of the Boulder County Rape Crisis Team, because telling the story of the Rape Crisis Team is the best way I know of to demonstrate the profound effect of the Violence Against Women Act. When I started at the Rape Crisis Team, we had 2 paid staff members, a full-time executive director and a very part-time administrative assistant. Everything else was done by volunteers. Fast forward 21 years, and talk about the organization post-VAWA. It's now called Moving to End Sexual Assault, or MESA. It currently has 7 paid staff members. When I spoke to Dr. Janine D'Anibal, who was MESA's executive director for 10 years, about VAWA's impact, she said the most important thing, even beyond the money, was the fact that they could always count on the money. It was stable. It was sustainable, so it allowed them to plan for the future and to grow the program. Now, what we accomplished at the Rape Crisis Team with 2 paid staff people was nothing short of miraculous, but it was nothing close to what they're able to do today.
Today, the violence against women money, both what's happening at the stop grant level at the states and what's happening nationally, there is program after program in communities of color, serving immigrant women, serving deaf women, serving rural communities, serving people that we never dreamed would ever have a part of the pie. In terms of hard numbers, there have been over 30,000 cases of VAWA self-petitions granted to battered immigrant women and children since the issuance of the Violence Against Women Act in '94. I got a call from an ally, a healthcare provider in Wisconsin, and she says, I called to say thank you. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, we just finished 6 weeks of work on a case of a victim in Wisconsin who initially lost her kids in court, eventually, was turned into DHS, was detained, et cetera, et cetera. And because of the work we all did, and because of VAWA, that woman was able to get to programs that were funded in 2 states by the Violence Against Women Act funding, was able to get a VAWA self-petition granted, was able to get out of detention, was able to win a protection order, and was able to win back custody of her kids from her abuser. And that's what it's all about.
We heard the Vice President clearly talking about the intersection of violence and the economy, and talking about how costly violence is. One of the things we have not hit on today is the effect of the economy on violence or interpersonal violence, and the fact that as our economy worsens, interpersonal violence worsens as well. Also, part of it is trying to figure out how to support women who are in the workplace and being victimized, because we know that them being able to maintain that employment is key to them being able to escape the abuse when they are ready and able to do that. And trying to figure out, because we have always known that poor women are at the greatest risk for abuse, trying to figure out how recipients of TANF or other people who were in dire straits before the middle class began to experience it in the context of this economic downturn, trying to figure out how to address that piece as well, I think is also key to the way forward.
Today, 15 years and 2 reauthorizations later, we hail the Violence Against Women Act and its champion for providing more than $9 billion in government funding for critical services for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. All thanks to the extraordinary commitment and leadership of then Senator and now our Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
It is now my great privilege to welcome the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. I know you're giving me the Legal Momentum Hero Award, but I want to point out that the real heroes, my heroes, are people who have been victimized. The people who have had the courage to come forward. I listened to the stories of the women who ran the shelters and the rape crisis centers all around the country, the emergency rooms, shelters that seemed to be supported by nothing more than a bake sale and the best of intentions. And as a result, with the leadership of my staff, we issued a landmark, I think it's a landmark, presumptuous of me to say that, a landmark report portraying the tragedy, the human tragedy of 1 week in the life of abused women in America. And the report detailed that 21,000 crimes against women that were reported every single week in America, just the ones reported. A small slice of the 1.1 million assaults, aggravated assaults, murders, and rapes against women committed in the home, in the office place, in the workplace, in the parking lot. A woman whose boyfriend broke her right arm with a hammer. A woman whose father had beaten her in the head with a pipe. A 15-year-old girl stabbed by her ex-boyfriend the day he was released from jail. The rapes, the beatings, the blood, and the tears, all before Wednesday. I finally remember, like it was yesterday, President Clinton at the bill signing, and him saying, let's roll up our sleeves and roll back this awful tide of violence and reduce crime in this country. That was 15 years ago. Well, all of your sleeves are still rolled up, and so are mine. And they got to stay rolled up.